Hollywood's golden age glittered with diamonds, gowns, and untouchable icons. But when the bright lights faded and the curtain finally fell, the truth surfaced in the cold rooms of coroners. Behind the glamorous photos were fragile bodies carrying scars, damage, and hidden stories no studio would ever print in a press release. What really happened when the stars took their final bow? And which legends carried secrets etched into their very bones? Let's open the files and find out. Natalie Wood. She was America's sweetheart, the luminous face of West Side Story. Yet Natalie Wood's last moments were anything but picture-perfect. Found floating near Catalina Island in 1981, the initial explanation was simple: a tragic fall from her yacht. But the autopsy cracked that neat story apart. Doctors discovered bruises along her wrists, arms, and legs, some shaped like fingerprints, others resembling the marks of being grabbed or pushed. Witnesses from the boat described shouting, furniture rattling, and sudden silence. Her husband, Robert Wagner, her co-star Christopher Walken, and the yacht's captain were all present that night, yet no one could explain how a woman terrified of water would wander off deck. When the case was reopened decades later, the cause of death was officially changed from accident to undetermined. That small word lit a firestorm in the press. Fans saw a darker narrative: jealousy, late-night arguments, maybe even a cover-up. Wagner kept quiet, Walken refused comment, and the captain admitted there had been fighting. To this day, the unanswered bruises on Wood's body feel like fingerprints frozen in time, whispering of a final struggle no one wants to name. Hollywood lost not just a star but also clarity, leaving behind one of the most haunting mysteries in entertainment history: Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe's passing in 1962 is still debated in whispers, and her autopsy only fueled the storm. The report revealed her system carried sky-high levels of barbiturates, enough to stop anyone's heart. But here's the twist that still unsettles doctors. Her stomach was completely empty. No traces, no residue, nothing to prove she swallowed the massive amount that ended her life. So, how did the substances get there? Some suggested injections. Others pointed to more unusual delivery methods. What really unnerved observers was how the scene looked staged. Monroe was found lying peacefully in bed, hands stretched toward the phone as if frozen mid-call. A nurse later admitted her first thought was that everything looked too perfect, almost rehearsed. And then came the rumors. Monroe had confided in friends that she kept a red notebook, recording private conversations with some of the most powerful men in America. Whether true or not, the idea of a diary filled with national secrets was enough to keep the conspiracy mill spinning for decades. Her funeral drew thousands who remembered the radiant girl from the 7-Year Itch, but her autopsy left the world with a question mark. Was it despair, pressure, or something else entirely? The tidy scene and the empty stomach remain one of Hollywood's coldest riddles. James Dean. James Dean was only 24 when his silver Porsche, nicknamed Little Bastard, collided on Highway 46. The crash itself was headline news, but the coroner's report was so graphic that journalists compared it to images from bomb testing sites. Dean's body was broken beyond recognition, his chest crushed, his liver pulverized, his neck snapped in an instant. But the real storm came after. Rumors swirled that his personal life held secrets Hollywood didn't want exposed. Private letters vanished mysteriously from his apartment within days of the accident. Friends whispered that Warner Brothers sent trucks to remove entire suitcases of papers. Some said these included confessions of relationships that would have been career-ending in that era. Dean's death wasn't just a traffic accident. It became a cautionary tale of how Hollywood could polish a rebel's image for the screen while erasing the truths that didn't fit the mold. His autopsy gave the public a horrifying glimpse of physical destruction, but the missing papers hinted at a different kind of loss, the erasure of a more complex man. Every time his defiant gaze from Rebel Without a Cause flashes across a screen, people remember not just the cool icon but also the coroner's notes that read like a nightmare and the secrets whisked away before anyone could read them. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor's violet eyes and dazzling beauty crowned her as Hollywood royalty, but the autopsy painted a very different picture. When doctors examined her in 2011, They found a heart enlarged, almost double its size, riddled with scar tissue. It looked like a battlefield. The scars weren't random. They traced decades of surgeries, some never disclosed to the public. Brain procedures, bowel resections, even experimental transplants left hidden marks. Her lungs showed signs of secret treatments for cancer, and her organs bore the heavy impact of years spent on strong medications. Add to that cosmetic surgeries across her body, and her autopsy revealed just how much Taylor had endured under the pressure of perfection. The price of being forever youthful in front of cameras was a body sliced, stitched, and exhausted. Even more painful were the whispers that Taylor's private battles with loneliness and heartbreak had amplified the toll. Doctors noted chronic depression, and friends spoke of relationships that had to remain hidden in the shadows. Headlines summed it up bluntly: "The Queen took her secrets to the grave." Elizabeth Taylor's final report showed the reality behind the diamonds and gowns. Her body carried the receipts of fame, 30 surgeries, and scars that never made the red carpet. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando redefined acting with raw intensity, but his autopsy revealed another story, one of quiet suffering and secret operations. When he passed in 2004, his body was unrecognizable from the lean figure in A Streetcar Named Desire. He weighed over 150 kilograms, his face puffed, his belly distended. Doctors discovered winding scars across his chest and abdomen, evidence of multiple procedures he had never spoken about. Whispers followed that he underwent secret weight loss surgeries, possibly even stomach reductions, hidden from the press to protect his mythic image. Coroners also noted signs of heart surgeries and complications from diabetes, adding to the map of scars across his torso. Fans who only saw him on TV in oversized suits never realized how much theater went into hiding his decline. Brando's voice remained commanding, his eyes still sharp, but under the surface, his body was unraveling. Journalist Peter Manso once described his autopsy as looking at a map of concealment. Brando's death stripped away the illusion. The Godfather himself wasn't untouchable. He was a man carrying decades of illness and desperate attempts to hold back time, with scars as his last confession. Paul Newman. Paul Newman was the definition of cool. Piercing blue eyes, a quick smirk, and a cigarette always at hand. He made smoking look effortless, even glamorous. But when his autopsy was conducted in 2008, doctors found something that looked like it came out of a coal mine, not a human body. His lungs weren't pink. They were pitch black, caked stiff with tar. When cut, they didn't give way softly. They crunched like brittle wood. Newman had smoked heavily for decades, sometimes 3 packs in a single shoot day. Hollywood even encouraged it, weaving cigarettes into his on-screen persona. But behind the charm was an organ system collapsing under the strain. His liver and kidneys were exhausted, filtering toxins for years, and his heart showed signs of overwork. In life, Newman rarely admitted his health struggles. He still walked red carpets with poise, hiding the truth inside. But his will revealed a haunting line: "If I die from cigarettes, consider it a warning." And when the autopsy results leaked, that line became the headline. Networks replayed it like a final message to fans. Paul Newman's charm never faded, but his body told the truth Hollywood had glamorized for far too long. The same habit that helped craft his image destroyed him from the inside. His lungs became the ultimate cautionary tale, darker than any role he ever played. Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen built his brand on toughness. The king of cool roared through chase scenes, fought brawls on screen, and lived like no one could break him. But by 1980, cancer had torn his body apart, and doctors in the United States refused to operate. Desperate for hope, he crossed into Mexico, choosing an underground clinic in a dusty border town. The conditions were shocking: rusty tools, flickering lights, and a makeshift operating table. McQueen underwent a surgery there, one that removed a massive tumor. Hours later, he died in a shabby room far from Hollywood luxury. His body was returned, and the autopsy told the rest of the story. Doctors found his chest lined with asbestos fibers, likely from years working in shipyards before stardom. His liver was swollen, his kidneys worn down, but the most disturbing sight was the fresh surgical scar across his abdomen. Rough, jagged stitches oozing like a wound from a battlefield. The report stunned America. Why would a millionaire star entrust his life to a backroom operation? The answer was simple: desperation. McQueen wanted time, any time, even if it meant risking everything. In the end, the rebel who once outran police cars on screen lost his final race in a dim Mexican clinic, leaving behind a scarred body that symbolized both defiance and despair. Humphrey Bogart. When you think of Humphrey Bogart, you think of Casablanca, the confident man, with a cigarette and a glass in hand. But when his body was examined in 1957, the man the world knew as Bogey was almost unrecognizable. He weighed under 40 kilograms, his skin pale and tight against bones, his eyes sunken. The autopsy revealed the full toll. Esophageal cancer had ravaged his throat, making it nearly impossible to eat. His lungs were jet black, brittle from years of smoke. When cut, they gave off an acrid smell that stunned even seasoned coroners. His liver had shrunk to half its size, scarred by decades of whiskey and gin. His heart was frail, trembling under the strain. Doctors noted a feeding tube scar on his stomach, proof that in his last days he couldn't even swallow a spoonful of porridge. Friends who visited said they could barely recognize the man who once embodied toughness and charm. Some avoided the room altogether, not wanting to replace the memory of Bogey with the skeleton he had become. The autopsy became the final verdict. The glamorous props of cigarettes and liquor, which Hollywood had pushed as stylish, had consumed one of its greatest icons. The man who once said, "Here's looking at you, kid," left the world looking at a haunting truth. Style can kill just as powerfully as substance. Clark Gable. Clark Gable was the king of Hollywood, the man who made audiences swoon with a half-smile and a line in Gone with the Wind. But by 1960, the king's crown was crushing him. On the set of The Misfits, he worked alongside Marilyn Monroe and Montgomery Clift, two actors battling their own demons. The stress was constant. To cope, Gable chain-smoked up to 6 packs a day and fueled himself with black coffee and bourbon. 12 days after filming wrapped, he collapsed from chest pain. The autopsy revealed a terrifying sight. His heart was swollen to nearly twice its size, arteries hardened like plaster pipes, blood trickling through tiny cracks. Doctors said bluntly it looked like the heart of an 80-year-old man, though Gable was only 59. His stomach bore ulcers, scars from years of coffee and liquor, and his liver showed signs of exhaustion. In short, the king had been running on fumes, pushing his body past its breaking point to maintain the myth of strength. When the news broke, NBC somberly declared, "A king has fallen." Thousands poured into the streets for his funeral, weeping as his flag-draped coffin passed by. The autopsy's verdict was clear. Clark Gable died not of one bad day, but of decades of relentless pressure, smoke, and pride. The king's heart, aged 20 years beyond its time, was proof that Hollywood crowns come with a deadly weight. Judy Garland. For millions, Judy Garland will always be Dorothy, singing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." But the little girl who won hearts never truly escaped the shadow of studio control. From her early teens, MGM handed her pills to keep her awake, pills to keep her thin, and pills to put her to sleep. It wasn't a choice. It was survival in a system that demanded perfection. By 1969, Garland was living in a small London apartment when her body finally gave out. She weighed only 36 kilograms, hair falling in clumps, fingernails purple from lack of oxygen. The autopsy revealed chronic damage to her stomach and liver, scars from years of dependency. The official note was chilling: a 47-year-old star, but the body of a long-starved teenager. Colleagues later admitted the studio had trained her on a cycle of substances, as if they were part of her daily diet. Former castmates recalled assistants slipping her pep pills in the morning and sedatives at night. What began as a studio's method of control became Judy's lifelong cage. Her funeral drew 20,000 fans, many singing "Over the Rainbow" through tears. But the autopsy stripped away the fairy tale. Judy Garland wasn't just a tragic star. She was living proof of how an industry could break a child, then demand she smile through it, all The rainbow ended not in gold but in scars etched into her very organs. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra, Old Blue Eyes, was more than a singer. He was an institution. Night after night, he stepped on stage in a tux, glass in hand, voice smooth as velvet. To fans, he seemed unstoppable, timeless. But the coroner's report in 1998 revealed a body that had been running on fumes for decades. His lungs were stiff and fibrotic, hardened until they felt like stone beneath the scalpel. Black clumps of tar clung inside, evidence of a lifetime of cigarettes. His arteries were no better, blocked up to 90%, blood fighting to squeeze through narrow channels. The heart muscle itself was thin, overworked, on the verge of collapse. Doctors wrote bluntly, he died from a system worn out by years of indulgence. What jarred the public most was the contrast. On stage, Sinatra was a picture of confidence, joking with Dean Martin, crooning love songs, raising a toast. Behind the scenes, he carried a failing body, one clogged vessel away from disaster. When the autopsy hit the papers, fans were stunned. Could the same man who sang My Way really have been so fragile? In a sense, yes. Sinatra's autopsy stripped away the legend and left behind the truth. Even a golden voice can be smothered by smoke and stress. He didn't leave this world in a blaze of glory but with lungs as heavy as concrete blocks, reminding us that the spotlight never protects the body beneath it. John Wayne. John Wayne was the cowboy who seemed invincible. He strode across deserts, fought in endless battles, and always came out on top. But in 1979, when his body was examined, doctors found something no one expected: traces of radiation lodged in his organs. The discovery led back to the mid-1950s, when Wayne filmed The Conqueror in the Nevada desert, less than 150 miles from a nuclear test site. At the time, the government assured everyone the area was safe. Cast and crew camped under skies where radioactive dust still drifted from explosions. They rode horses, drank water, and breathed air laced with invisible fallout. Decades later, the toll was undeniable. More than 90 people connected to that film developed cancer, including Wayne himself. His autopsy showed cancer spread through his stomach and lungs, with tissues bearing signs of abnormal radiation exposure. The public reaction was furious. John Wayne didn't die of old age, one paper wrote. He died because of a movie. Talk shows debated whether Hollywood had sacrificed its stars for a production schedule. Fans who grew up idolizing the Duke's rugged image were forced to face the irony. The man who had survived bullets, bar fights, and frontier danger on screen was undone by dust no one could see. His autopsy became a chilling reminder that sometimes the deadliest enemies don't carry weapons. They linger silently in the air. Burt Lancaster. Burt Lancaster's smile once lit up theaters. With roles in classics like From Here to Eternity, he embodied vitality and masculine power. But in 1994, his autopsy revealed a shocking contradiction. His heart was scarred like a battlefield, marked with the aftermath of multiple small strokes, episodes that the public never knew about. Doctors described layers of hardened tissue in his heart muscle, each one evidence of a failure he had silently endured. Medical staff later admitted he had staggered backstage more than once, eyes going dark, before stepping out under the lights with that same dazzling grin. It was a cover-up not just of illness, but of identity. Why hide it? Because Lancaster's image was built on strength. A fragile hero didn't sell tickets. His managers and studio blocked any news from leaking, ensuring fans saw only the glowing star, not the man fighting collapse behind the curtain. The autopsy also reignited rumors about Lancaster's private life, relationships he supposedly concealed to maintain his Hollywood persona. Critics argued the strokes were as much psychological as physical, born of the crushing weight of secrecy. When news broke, one headline cut deep: "The hero felled by a failing heart." For fans, it felt like betrayal. The man who seemed unbreakable had been broken repeatedly. Only no one was allowed to see it. Lancaster's autopsy showed the price of maintaining a mask. Behind every smile was a scar. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner was once called the most beautiful woman alive. Men left marriages for her. Tycoons hired detectives to follow her. and Sinatra nearly lost his mind over her. But by 1990, the goddess who had bewitched Hollywood was gone, leaving behind an autopsy that revealed just how much her lifestyle had consumed her. Her liver was cirrhotic, scarred beyond repair from decades of heavy drinking. Her lungs were damaged from thousands upon thousands of cigarettes. Her body showed the strain of nights spent alone, leaning on alcohol even as friends and doctors begged her to stop. The glamorous woman who once commanded every red carpet had spent her last years quietly in London, often in hotel rooms with a glass always nearby. She admitted to friends that alcohol was her crutch. If not for it, what else would get me through the day? It was a confession of exhaustion disguised as bravado. When the autopsy results were released, fans recoiled. The woman they remembered in silk gowns was revealed as a body battered by smoke and liquor. Even her most famous romances couldn't shield her from the toll. Sinatra wasn't there. Hughes wasn't there. In the end, Gardner's only companions were the habits that undid her. Her final report was a tragic contrast. A woman worshipped as immortal beauty, whose body bore the marks of relentless decay. The goddess of Hollywood had been mortal all along. Rita Hayworth's hair toss in Gilda was enough to silence an entire theater. To audiences, she was radiant, confident, untouchable. But in her later years, the press mocked her decline, calling her a drunk who had lost control. The truth, revealed in her autopsy in 1987, was far more heartbreaking. Doctors found her brain had shrunk dramatically. Rita wasn't losing herself to drink, she was battling end-stage Alzheimer's. The disease had stripped her memory, her craft, and her identity long before she passed. For years, paparazzi snapped cruel photos of her stumbling, forgetting lines, or looking confused, and tabloids plastered them with headlines about alcohol. No one wanted to hear another explanation. Yet the coroner's report proved the tragedy. Rita's decline wasn't self-inflicted. It was the slow theft of her mind, by a disease barely understood at the time. Her daughter later recalled that in her final years, Rita sometimes looked at her and asked, "Who is Mother?" The image of a star once adored by millions reduced to confusion was more shocking than any headline. The revelation stunned the public. Newspapers admitted they'd been wrong. The glamorous star hadn't destroyed herself, she had been betrayed by her own brain. Rita Hayworth's autopsy forced Hollywood to confront not indulgence, but illness, and the cruelty of judging without knowing the truth. So there it is, 15 legends, each revealed in ways the red carpet never showed. From bruises hinting at mysteries to lungs blackened like coal, from scars of surgeries to minds stolen by disease, these autopsies remind us that the glamour was only skin deep. Which of these revelations struck you the hardest? Share your thoughts below, and if you want more untold Hollywood truths, hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Because in the shadows of old Hollywood, the secrets never really stay buried.